So since I was third row, I bum rushed the stage at the end of the night and was trying to get anything that I could, music pick or something. And the roadie that was there wrapping up the chords and stuff was like, "We don't got nothing, man. Sorry, there's nothing up here, nothing up here." And I'm like, "How about that? What's that paper? Is that a paper? What is that?" And he picks it up off the ground, and it was the set list, and he hands it to me, and I was just like, "Oh my God." I rolled it up in this nice little roll and put it under my shirt and exited the arena looking like I was smuggling a gun or something.
Well, and so I keep meaning to bring this up. You brought this up, and now then I'm going to shoehorn it back in. You mentioned earlier in the conversation about them doing songs for the movie and how different would it have been if he had not used the songs. What kind of album would they have done? Would it have been successful? Would the movie been? There is a debate. Originally, when Bruce recorded Born in the USA, he did a blues slow version of it. And I don't know if you're familiar, but Springsteen did an album called Nebraska, which he recorded with basically a homemade tape recorder in his living room. And it was supposed to be demos for the band to perform. And when he started playing it, the band they just couldn't figure it out. And little Steven said, I think this is the album. And so he ended up releasing Nebraska, which is basically just a home recording. And then he did Born in the USA next. But when he first recorded Born in the USA, it's a very slow blues version. And
have you heard?
It's available. And he actually does a version of it when he was on Broadway.
Oh, cool.
And I hate that version. And then on the Broadway show, which, by the way, off record, we could debate on which of us spent the most money, because trust me, seeing Bruce on Broadway was not cheap, and I had to fly to New York. But similar to you, right? Like, what are the chances I'm going to see Bruce Springsteen on Broadway again?
Yeah, you can't. And Barry, this was his first concert in years. Like, he might never ever do this again.
I am still mad at myself that I did not go see Jeff Lynne when he toured a few years ago in Dallas. ELO was a big band when I was in high school.
Okay,
Jeff Lynne toured. I would have loved to seen him. I saw ELO back in the day. But anyway, so on Broadway, and it's available on Netflix, he talks a story about going to draft his physical for the draft card, and he failed it, and so he was not going to be drafted. And he tells the story because his father had always said, "Wait till the Army gets you, wait till the Army gets you, wait till the Army gets you." And when he came back, he told him that he wasn't eligible for the draft, and his father said, "Well, that's good, that's good." And then Bruce says, Mad Dog, Danny, and him were all three members of the band, did not go. And he says, "I'm glad, but I often think who went in my place." And then he does a very bluesy version of Born in the USA. And then I go, okay, I like this version. But the thought is, if he had not done the big anthem, would he have been as big? That big Born USA anthem and that album becoming the way it was, would he have become the superstar that he did, or would he have been a Neil Young? Very respected, great musician, loved, but not a megastar the way Madonna, Michael Jackson, Prince, Tom Petty, that kind of range. So
I could definitely see where he would fall into that other category, the non-legendary status category. Same thing like the BeeGees. If they didn't sign up with the disco stuff, would their career trajectory, they would have still made music. Bruce would have still made music.
Yes.
They would have still had similar experiences, so the songs might have been the same, but I don't think they would be held in this iconic regard as both of them are at this stage of the game.
Would Barry Gibb have worked with Barbra Streisand? Would he have helped write Grease? Right? I mean, would there was a point where I remember there was a Grammy on TV, I'm old enough to remember, where Barbra Streisand and Neil Diamond had that "You Don't Bring Me Flowers." They both had recorded the song separately. Some DJ ended up splicing it together, and then they ended up recording it. So they did it live at the Grammys, and Barbra Streisand said no. And then later she performed with Barry Gibb, and she says, "I feel like I'm cheating on Neil Diamond." But I mean, he became, he was one of the biggest producers and songwriters. I mean, he was major.
They definitely, in the 80s, had to do that. They had to adapt because they weren't getting airplay as the BeeGees. So they went and worked with Barbra Streisand, Diana Ross, Dionne Warwick, Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton's Islands in the Stream. Andy, they worked with him a little bit. So that 80s era was what cemented them as songwriters too, not just performers. Their biggest hit as songwriters is Barbra Streisand's "I Am a Woman in Love." That outgrossed everything they did as individuals and as the BeeGees. So like that sort of also makes you think, like Barry Gibb himself is probably, I don't know the numbers, but he's up there with Lennon and McCartney as content, as amount of songs that were made, amount of songs that were number ones, amount of songs that were this and that. Like, but I think Lennon and McCartney get the respect because of the era that they were in.
Yes,
they weren't attached to the stigma of disco. Barry Gibb should be up there, and the rest of his brothers co-wrote most of those songs too. The three of them should be up there with the greatest of all time.
Absolutely. How are you on time? Are you good?
I'm good. Let's keep going.
Okay, great. All right. So my question was how many times you've seen him live. So just the once, except for being disappointed about "I'm on Fire." Was the rest of the show okay?
Well, let's take a look at what the rest of the show was.
Very nice.
Oh, did it happen to be the set list that was from the stage? Yes, it was. You could see here, "I'm on Fire" was right after "Run to Me" and right before "Spirits Having Fun."
Very nice.
So since I was third row, I bum rushed the stage at the end of the night and was trying to get anything that I could, like a music pick or something. And the roadie that was there wrapping up the chords and stuff was like, "We don't got nothing, man. Sorry, there's nothing up here. And I'm like, "How about that? What's that paper? Is that a paper? What is that?" And he picks it up off the ground, and it was the set list, and he hands it to me, and I was just like, oh my God. I rolled it up in this nice little roll and tucked it under my shirt and exited the arena looking like I was smuggling a gun or something. But I didn't, not until we got onto the bus or the subway or whatever we were getting to go back to my friend's house, did I actually take it out and hold it. And then a bunch of people around me like, "Hey, what's that? Is that the set list? Oh my God, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Oh, gotta put it back under here." So like I had to hide this set list again. So this is probably one of my prized possessions, because Barry Gibb looked at this set list to play in 2014. So yeah, the rest of the show was fun. There was that tinge of, I wish Robin and Morris was there. But seeing his niece Samantha Gibb sing, and hearing Steve, his son, sing, was a totally separate experience. It was also crazy because, you know, because it was third row, we had like this pre-party thing and we had special seating and stuff. So at like some point during the night, I turned around and looked. This was in Wells Fargo Arena. And I turn around and look, and there was just this giant sea of an arena of thousands of people. And you think Barry Gibb in 2014, you know, some of these acts, when they reach that age, start playing smaller venues, start playing some, you know, acoustic versions of things. But no, here he was in 2014, belting out this high falsetto, packing a huge arena on an arena tour across the United States. That was an experience. So it was definitely not fever height, but it was a respectable showing. And now he's doing a country duets album that's coming out in January, where he's reinventing all of his music, kind of like Bruce did when he did the you know, jazzy version or the rock version of Staying Alive.
Mm-hmm.
He paired up with all these country artists to perform and interpret classic Gibb compositions in country music styles. And you know, people like Dolly Parton's on there, Brandi Carlile, you know, a couple other huge names that I'm not a country guy, so off the top of my head I can't think of too many. But it's going to be an interesting experiment of an album that's coming out now too.
So let's book it now. After it comes out, we'll have it a week or two to digest it. I'll get it too, and then we'll have you back on and we'll talk about it. How's that sound?
Awesome. Yeah. All right. I love it.
All right. So now we may get uncomfortable here, and if I offend you, I apologize. I really had a problem with Andy Gibb, and I will tell you why. I felt like he was riding the coattails of his brother, and they were doing background vocals, they were writing, and this is my perception only, and like, why don't you just become the fourth BG? Like, why do we don't hear Barry Gibb solo album, we don't hear, you know, Maurice, we don't hear anything else, and this is, of course, this is a 19-20-year-old arrogant Jesse, right? And then tragically he died, and then I felt like crap. But from your perspective, make me either feel better about my thought of that or shame me into I should go, you know, say three Hail Marys and a Staying Alive and Forgive Me, Father.
I think there was always that desire for him to be a BG, but the age difference was way too great for him to join his brothers at the time. That was the big reason. And he also wanted to prove himself on his own. And of course his brothers helped him out. And who knows what kind of support or what kind of bad advice he would have gotten from other people as well. But from what I understand, or from everything I've read and have seen, he wanted to prove on his own that he could be a solo act. Some of his songs, they're BG songs with him singing lead and his brothers behind him as much. But there's one song, and it's I can't think of it off the top of my head. Flowing Rivers.
Okay.
Which he wrote himself. And it has, and this is, I think, probably early 80s. And he wrote it separately from his more famous older brothers. And it has more of a country twist to it. Mm-hmm. And you kind of start hearing what himself would have been had he been able to do that. But he got in that Solid Gold thing where he was singing. Yeah. He got in a bad relationship with Victoria Principal. Right. He was doing like all kinds of partying and with the drugs and the booze and all that. So none of that would have helped him. I think, his his image of Barry Gibb light hurt him.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I think had he not died,
yeah,
he would have joined the Bee Gees at that point in the late 80s.
And
I think there were talks of like them starting to be like, hey, let's bring him in because he's having a hard time.
Yeah.
He'll be closer to us. We could take care of him more. And he was staying with Robin when he died. So,
you know, you could almost similar to like the Jacksons, right? Like Michael Jackson was Jackson 5, then it became the Jacksons because of your family.
Yeah.
So, okay, I have homework for you.
Okay.
There is a Bruce Springsteen has a new album out, and he wrote a song called "Last Man Standing."
Okay.
And what led to this is his first band was the Castiles, and last year he was at the bedside of his old bandmate, and the bandmate passed away, and Bruce realized he was the last surviving member of that band.
Okay.
And so he wrote a song, Last Man Standing. Think you might like it, and if you think of it about Barry, I think it may, you may view this in a way that's, I think, I have talked to other musicians, and they've said that the album really speaks to them because it is the love of a band and such.
Nice. Then can I
sure.
equally flip that on you?
Yeah.
I want you to look into Barry's individual solo album from 2012. No, 2016.
Okay.
Barry Gibb's In the Now.
Okay.
This, I think you would actually dig a lot of songs off this album.
Okay.
The song, the Home Truth song, is one of my favorites. In the Now and Grand Illusion are really good as well. But there's one song on here called The End of the Rainbow. And it's a very similar to Last Man Standing in like the whole, everybody I know is dying sort of way. I believe Barry, when he visited Robin on his deathbed, sang End of the Rainbow to him. Because he was writing it at the time. So that's a very emotional song about the same sort of thing. So
I will look forward to that. For a while there, David, I was trying to get, I was trying to promote the podcast, and so I reached out to other podcasters.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, would you want to be on the podcast? And they're like, well, I don't know any Bruce Springsteen. I'm like, well, what if I give you 10 Bruce Springsteen songs that are not Born to Run, not Dancing in the Dark, In fact, I'll put a pin on that. I'll finish that statement, then I'll bring it up. And so I came up with 10 songs, and I gave it to them in advance. And I said, okay, I called them Springsteen newbie episodes. And then they came on, and we played the songs, a little clip of the song, and they talked about it, whether they liked it or not. And it made a pretty fun episode. 4 or 5 months ago, I had a guy on who used to be a big U2 fan, broke up with him, and really loved Gang of Youth, another band from Australia. And he did the same thing. He gave me 10 Gang of Youth songs, and I listened to them, and then he came on and we talked about them. So if you think about it, if you'd want to give me 10 less than known BeeGees songs, we could maybe do that in the future.
I have already started, while you were telling that story, compiling the 10 in my head.
Okay.
So well, so this comes into play. Like when I discovered the Bee Gees in the 90s, I was a teenager in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A male teenager in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the 90s. Nobody I knew listened to the Bee Gees. I was such an outcast, and all of my first 10, 15 years of loving the Bee Gees was trying to convince my friends to listen to their music and force them and make tapes for them and things like that. So part of my early quest was to, try to spread the word of the Bee Gees. So if you want me to make a playlist of 10 songs,
I would love that episode. I would love to do that, because here was what I thought in mid thought. I just recently, my first response when anyone says, I'm not really a big fan of Bruce Springsteen's music, my first thought, and I've learned to keep it to myself, but my first thought is, okay, what Bruce Springsteen songs have you listened to? Have you only heard the stuff from Born in the USA? Have you only heard My Hometown, Dancing in the Dark, Glory Days, maybe Born in the USA? Have you heard anything that wouldn't be on, classic rock? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, look, I can give you songs like his album before last, Western Stars, was very much in the mode of Glenn Campbell and Jimmy Webb. It's this beautiful collection. I can give you songs that sound nothing like Born to Run, and then I learn, okay, it is not your job to be a prophet and convert everyone to the
but you want to be one, right?
Yes,
you want to be one,
right?
I definitely would go door to door knocking and saying, have you heard the songs and the stories of the Bee Gees?
Is that your first thought when someone says
100%?
Oh, I did, right? Like,
100%.
That's because you're thinking of Just Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah, because they're pigeonholed and they have that already preconceived notion of what they sound like. But my favorite songs are from the 90s, from the 80s. The early 2000s album was incredible as well. They have, you mentioned, like, Andy has his solo albums. You don't see the Bee Gees doing solo albums. Guess what they did? Robin had 9 solo albums on his own.
You are kidding. Wow.
No, Barry had 4, now going to be 5. Morris had 2 that one became a soundtrack and one was never published, and it was like released with bootlegs. So yeah, like they had 22 studio albums. They had about 15 to 20 solo albums. Then they had all the work that they did with other people. They did a full album with 2 full albums with Barbra Streisand, full album with Kenny Rogers, full album with Diana Ross, full album with Dionne Warwick. Like that's 6 just in the matter of 3 years.
Right.
Full albums that they did with huge celebrities that were enormous. So it's like, I think if I counted up, because I did another podcast where I took from 1967, whenever their first album came out, to the year 2000 and whatever it is now. I think there were over 50, I think there were 53 studio albums.
Wow.
Like there were some years they wrote 3 albums in 1 year.
Wow.
Like, that's disgusting. And you're telling me, like
Bruce has had 19.
Okay.
Which is, you go, wow, that's a lot of albums. But you go, wow, when you talk about, right, many albums is crazy.
Yeah. So, and of course, not all of them are going to be Saturday Night Fever. Not all of them are going to be huge, great songs. Are there some albums that I listen to maybe, once every 5 years? Sure. Yeah. But some of their like, I'll find you a good 10. We could easily.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, I could easily put together a night.
That'd be great. So, a couple of questions, and you may want to think on this. Okay. I just celebrated my 5th year anniversary of doing this podcast, and
congratulations.
Thank you. And one of the episodes we did for fun is I also do a Doctor Who podcast. And don't know how familiar you are with Doctor Who, but the premise is that a Time Lord has a time machine that can go anywhere in space and time, and it looks like a police box, and it's called the TARDIS.
And it's bigger on the inside.
Yes, right? It is. So Charles, who is my partner, he and I did an episode where we picked the 5 shows the 5 rock concerts we would go to
Oh,
if we could go anywhere in the TARDIS.
okay.
And for fun, we said, we're only going to pick one. Like he says, okay, you're going to pick, after you pick 5 Springsteen shows, Jesse, what else? I'm like, no. In fact, I did not pick a Springsteen show, just this show, right? The reality is, if I had a TARDIS, I would go to every Springsteen show ever made, right?
Yeah, why stop?
Off the cuff, do you have
Off
a
the cuff.
show you would go, or an era you would want to go see?
I'd want to see their Spirits Having Flown tour, the Los Angeles Forum, I think it's called. It's the huge one. It was filmed for their TV special. It looks insane. It's never been released to watch, which is frustrating because it was at their height. There's a new documentary coming up on HBO, and it seems like they're going to show some of that on there. So hopefully they'll release that at some point, but I would love to be there because that was at their peak of Beatlesque, girls are screaming and passing out and pissing themselves and all that.
That would have been awesome.
I'd want to see that. I'd want to see, there was a rare show. Well, okay, so I'll save that one as my wild card one. I would want to see the last ever concert that they did in 2001 to ring in the new year. Actually, it might have been 2001 into 2002. It was the Wango Tango concert. So just to be there for the very last concert, because they sang all the hits, obviously, but they sang the new songs off their new album at the time. And I love their new stuff more than anything. You could hear, 20 million different versions of You Should Be Dancing, but I want to hear some of those rare ones that I never heard.
Sure.
So the wild card, the one that I was talking about, it would be, there was a tour in the 70s where Robin quit the band, and they got their sister Leslie to sit in for Robin.
Oh, how cool.
I think maybe 2 or 3 shows. So I would want to be and hear those shows. No recordings that I've ever known are, out there. Definitely nothing on YouTube or anything. So I don't know if they ever recorded that, but not too many people know that, the BeeGees have an older sister, and she sang. Yeah, she sat in and sang for 2 shows. So I would want to see one of them. That's 3. I'd want to see like the early 90s era. So 91, I think they had a High Civilization or a One for All tour. So I'd go see one of those. They toured, and they had a backing band and backing vocals, like female backing vocals with them. Because Barry at the time was having a lot of back trouble, and I don't think he was too confident of his high notes and stuff. So they had some help there, but because of that, it sounded different than any of the live BeeGees ones from just the regular band. I have some bootleg versions of those, so that would be cool to hear live.
Yeah.
So if that's one from the disco era, one from the early 70s era, one from the 90s era, one from the 2000s era, I guess I'd have to pick one from the 80s era. So they didn't tour much in the 80s, so I'd have to look. Okay. But off the top of my head,
that's interesting. That's cool.
I'd want to hit their peaks of their different eras. They had 5 different decades they did music in, so I would hit
That'd
5
be cool.
different.
David, what have I not asked you that I should have asked you?
Well, I looked into Bruce Springsteen's, what was the song called? Thunder Road.
Yes, I'm going to get to the Mary question, but
okay, all right.
BG-ish. Is there anything?
BG-esque.
Yes.
I
noticed you have a little bit of of collectors. You have a little bit of a paraphernalia.
So I collect. I collect as much merchandise as I can. I have all their albums on different formats.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Records, tapes, reel to reels, 8-tracks. There's only a couple 8-tracks anyway, but whatever. And all their stuff from when, like, the record players and the puzzles and the merchandise that went when they were at their peak.
Yeah.
I was a collector before I was a BeeGees fan. You know, I grew up reading the comic books and the trading cards and things like that. So to me, to be a fan, you need to own stuff to prove that you're a fan. So I think this is my way of saying, hey, look, I'm a huge fan.
So what does your lovely bride say about your passion / obsession?
She is very forgiving and very understanding, and she as long as I keep it in here in my office, I'm fine. I'm not allowed to, and she has, you know, her decorations that she likes, and she likes hummingbirds, and I'm like, well, honey, how come you get to put hummingbird things in the dining room and I can't put spirits having flown on the mantle? And she just gives me, you know, no, like, obviously I'm messing around, but still.
So I have a hallway. I was lucky enough, when Bruce put out his autobiography, everyone had said that he was a model author. He said he would do any press that he wanted, and so he did book appearances. Now, he did not sign the books in front of you. They shipped where he was playing over. He was playing in Europe at the time, and so they shipped him the title page, and he just sit there, Bruce Springsteen. They shipped it back, and then they printed the books. Oh, wow. So for like $25, you got a ticket, and the ticket got you to stand in line. You got your 3 seconds with Bruce. They took a photo of you with him with your camera, and then you got to sign the copy of the book. So I went down to Austin, Texas. It's a long story, and I won't bore my listeners with it again, but what do you say if you're going to meet one of your idols, right? And so I have told this story multiple times, but all the way down, I'm going, I don't know if you remember the movie The Godfather, but you know, Luca Brasi is outside waiting to see Don Corleone, and on the occasion of your daughter's wedding, may they have a masculine child. And you know, he's over and over again in his speech. That was me in the car. What am I going to say? Like, so we ended up getting 2 pictures. And so I took a picture of the title page of him signing it, printed it, and so kind of have a thread, the 2 pictures of me and Bruce in that. So I have a hallway of kind of different Bruce things, and every once in a while Linda will say, you know, we really need to change that, and I go to the living room. I go, we have a bourbon barrel, we have a shelf on the wall of bourbon, we have a box over here, we have a shelf over here with bourbon, we have 2 Blanton posters, we have a poster, we have bourbon everywhere around here. Well, you like bourbon too? Yes, I'm just saying there's bourbon everywhere, and I just got Bruce in the one hall. So yes, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. I would not even begin to even try to think of what I would say to Barry Gibb if I ever had the honor of meeting him. What did you say to Bruce? You didn't quote Godfather to him, did you?
No, I didn't. What I did is I had a lot of people said, you got to tell him about the podcast. You got to tell him about the podcast. And I said, no, I'm not going to tell him the podcast. Though I did wear my Set Listing Bruce t-shirt, have my picture taken with me. I said, last year I spent 9 months unemployed, and I listened to Better Days and Land of Hope and Dreams every day, and it's what got me through it. Thank you. And awesome. By the time I got to 9 months, next, you know, his handler's saying next. So I have said this more times than I got there. David, I needed to say it more than I needed him to hear it. Right. Yeah. And so I did. I got the picture of it. And, you know, people ask if you could have Bruce on your podcast, what would you do? And I said I would absolutely. I would spend all the time talking about the music he loves. I said I would try not to ask him one question about his music. I would do exactly like I'm doing with you. talk to me about, you love Benny King, you love the Drifters, you love, Otis Redding, you love the Beatles, you love Sam and Dave. Let's talk about the music that influenced you and helped you grow.
Because you kind of, you want to become, you don't want to bore him telling stories about himself.
Yeah.
You want to hang out with him. You want to be friends with him. You want to be like, connect with him on a level that's like, oh yeah, we're pals. Oh yeah, me and Bruce. Oh yeah, we hang out.
Because there is a local sports guy here, Norm Hitzges is his name, and he said that if you talk to Nolan Ryan, the famous baseball pitcher, and you talk to him about his 7 no-hitters, he will be bored. Yeah. If you ask him about the 2 home runs he's hit, he will talk your ear off. So yeah. I figure right in that spirit, right? Like if you talk to Barry about, Saturday Night Fever, right, you're gonna, he'll have some stories. But if you talk to him about, In the Now, and explain that End of Rainbow, I was going through a tough time and this song helped me, that will make him light up. Yeah, that's true.
I definitely feel that. The other thing I wanted to mention, I don't know how much time we have left.
No, we're good.
Well, I'll save it for the end. I could plug my stuff at the end.
Yes, I do want to hear that.
Projects.
Okay, good. Okay, so for those of you who may not have heard the podcast before, because you either found David or you're a BG fan, thank you for listening. I end the podcast every way with this. And why am I drawing a blank now on his name? So I'll have to insert this now.
Bruce Springsteen.
No, yeah. So God bless it. Why can I? Do you ever get that where you're sitting there going, "Oh, why can I not think of the name?" Why can I not remember his name? Oh, damn it. Oh, shit. Now, see, I'm going to have to edit mine out. So, and damn it. Oh, crap. Anyway, I will look this up. He is an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. And every year, his seniors, they take Thunder Road, the song from Bruce Springsteen, and they break it down as a poem. They go through all the lyrics. They talk of the imagery of the song. They compare it to Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. And at the end of the song, at the end of the 2 days, they ask, does Mary get in the car? So your homework was to listen to the song, read the lyrics, and then, by the way, there is no right or wrong answer, but your answer is, does Mary get in the car?
Yeah, I think she does.
Okay. You want to explain your work?
No, okay. Well, so I wasn't as familiar with Thunder Road as I thought I was.
Okay.
And I kept waiting for it to break out into Born to Run because they're very similar songs.
Yes.
They're almost
from the same
identical.
album. Yes.
I listened to it, and then I listened to it with the lyrics, and then I reached out to a friend who is a Bruce Springsteen fan, and she helped me out with a little bit of stuff, who also gave me the fun fact of that Mary's name was not originally Mary, that it was Angelina.
Yes, it was.
So I think part of me thinks Angelina got into the car.
I think that's a very fair answer. Yes.
So the things that popped out to me about this song specifically, one, I kept waiting for it to break out into Born to Run. 2, the part where he says, I learned how to make a guitar talk, and then he goes like, that's really lame. Number 3, no, I'm just kidding.
No, that's okay. No, we're in a safe zone here. We're in a safe zone.
I was going to say, I'll bring some hot take opinions if we need to.
No, that's fine. I love it.
That part caught me off guard because I didn't expect, because it was fun.
Okay.
The other part, which is what made me think of whether or not she got in the car, was the lyric, you ain't no beauty, but hey, you're all right. So one, do I think she should have gotten into the car? No. I think that whoever was driving was not good enough for her. Two, the fact that she was no beauty meant she probably didn't have too many options, so she might as well get in the car anyway.
Okay, very interesting. Very nice.
So it's like, yeah, of course she's going to get in the car. She's excited that a boy is showing her attention. So she's going to get in the car because she doesn't have a lot of suitors. Now, Angelina.
Yes.
She is probably prettier than Mary.
Okay.
Which is probably why he changed the name to Mary.
Okay.
Because you think Angelina, you ain't no beauty, but hey, you're all right. No, Angelina's a goddess. She dances. Like she dances on that porch, and she doesn't get into 95% of those cars.
I like it.
Mary hops into as many cars as she can because that's what Mary's got.
Very nice. I love it. Very nice. All right. If someone wants to reach you, tell us how.
So one of the things I'm doing with the BeeGees thing, and I mentioned that part of my my quest is to extend and somehow expand the BeeGees universe. I've been focusing and going through my life as a BeeGees fan and starting to write down my own experiences as an atypical BeeGees fan, growing up 20 years later after their peak and experiencing the world and learning of the BeeGees through that. So I started this memoir, an idea of these collection of short stories of things that happen to me that happen to center around the BeeGees because I'm a weird BeeGees obsessed psycho. So it's called BeeGees and Me. And hopefully I'll have it done and ready for next year. But in the meantime, I have social media account setups, website accounts set up, and I'm sharing different things like some fun Photoshops where I Photoshop myself into famous pictures of the BeeGees. I open up some of my collection here. I have unboxed versions of their sing-along strobe phonograph. So
nice.
if you go to my YouTube channel, you could see me open this up, take it out of the box for the first time in 40 years. And, you know, a future episode, I'm going to throw a vinyl record on here to see if it still plays.
Very nice.
Things like that. So we're going to like the album that got me loving the BeeGees is Sizes and Everything. This is the record that I had since 1993. Of course, I had to go around and buy all the versions of it from around the world. So here is a German pressing. Here's a Japan pressing. Here's a Russian pressing. Here's a West Germany pressing. There is the cassettes still sealed with the hype sticker on here. This is a bootleg from India with a clamshell. This is another bootleg from Uruguay that I bought. I've never seen a cover like this from Poland. So part of this BeeGees and Me thing is I want to share some of these treasures that I've collected in my BeeGees museum here. And I want to connect with other fans who have these things and who could appreciate these things because, you know, the farther we get away from disco, the farther we get away from all this, the harder it's going to be to celebrate this music. So I kind of want to do my part of uniting some people, bring them together. Let's all share our love for the BeeGees, and it's BeeGees and me. It's BeeGees and you. It's, you know, BeeGees. Oh, I forgot. I got this one from Belgium just last week.
Nice.
Was a different thing. So yeah. So that's part of what I'm documenting through the website, BeeGeesandMe.com, and all on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I have a Facebook group you could join. We have a lot of fun.
Your Twitter handle?
BeeGees and Me.
Okay.
So at BeeGees and Me on Twitter, at BeeGees and Me on Instagram. The Facebook group is called BeeGees and Me. I'll have a book. GEES and Me.
Okay, ANDME spelled out?
Yep.
Okay.
Now looking back, I should have put a second E on all of these accounts, like BeeGees and Me,
Yeah.
BeeGeemee.
Yes. All right.
Damn it.
Great. That sounds awesome. Um, so there's a Springsteen and I documentary where
Oh.
um, the filmmaker asked fans, and they have fans filming their stories about what Bruce meant to them, experiences they had with Bruce, and he put it all together and made a documentary.
Is it called is it called Springsteen and I?
Yes.
No shit. Oh,
Yes. No,
sorry.
that's
Say it
fine. No,
again.
it's great. And
That's
yeah,
I had not heard of that.
yeah. So it's worth watching. It's a little slow at the beginning, and there's a couple you're going to go. Like my wife went with me, and she's like, "Okay, I don't know if I can stick with this, Jesse, because a couple of these people are lame." But then it becomes very powerful. My favorite story, and I will cut this off, but there is this wife talking to a husband, and she's like, when you think of Springsteen, what do you think? He goes, we travel all over Europe. We go to beautiful cities with great architecture, museums filled with art, wonderful food, and we spend it all going to a concert to see him perform.
That's awesome.
And then she's like, so if you could tell Bruce one thing, what would you tell him? Make it shorter. Some of us in the audience are not that big of fans. Make it shorter for us.
That's
so
well, and
yeah.
that's the step 2 of what I want to do.
Yeah.
Like I want to get this book out, and then I do want to do a BeeGees and You,
Yeah.
or BeeGees
Yeah.
and Me Too, and collect, because I want to connect with as many people, and then have them help tell their stories, and eventually have a podcast where it'll be just like you're doing with Springsteen, but me with connecting with other BeeGees fans.
I think that's beautiful.
Other fans, and I definitely would love to have you on to talk about Bruce.
We would. So the kicker is when Lynn and I went to see this film, like how Fandango will have, events, and there's extra at the end. So after the concert, after the film's over, they show a few songs of Bruce performing. Then they show him being interviewed. And Bruce says, he says, I'm at a pub and it's before a show, and I look and I go, hey, that's that guy who doesn't like me, because Bruce had seen a rough cut of the movie. Oh, go get him. So they bring him in. And so, of course, the guy's like, Bruce, I'm like, no, I love this. And so they show after the concert, they're backstage. And Bruce, the first thing he says, I'm sorry, I tried, but the crowd was really into it. And the guy is just mortified, right? Like, he's like, there's no way Bruce Springsteen should have heard this, and Bruce just loves it. Bruce just thinks this is the funniest thing. And, and he's just like it. So that was a great moment. So, awesome. That'll be wonderful. I think this would be fun. And I really do. I would love to, if you come up with 10 songs, I think this would be a great thing. Yeah. And I can send you 10 Springsteen songs and we can switch back and forth.
Do you have a Spotify account?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I could either just make a playlist in there and send you the link, or
whatever's easiest for you.
Yeah. Because there's probably some that I'd love to have you hear, but they're not on Spotify, which drives me crazy. And that's another thing. Like you said, Bruce, he released the slow version of Born in the USA. Yeah. Like Barry is very protective of other alternate takes and other things, and like stuff that wasn't officially released. It's so hard to get copies of that, and it drives fans like me crazy.
Well, what happened several years ago is Bruce released tracks, and it was 4 CDs of unreleased material.
Oh God.
And it was all unreleased material, and it kind of talked about, this was during Darkness on the Edge of Town, this was during Born in the USA. And so it has all this, and there's no really themes. It's just unreleased. And he was talking about that he's working on tracks 2, so he's going
That's
to do
cool.
another thing. And so exactly, I mean, of course, the rumor is, and he's flat said that he finished an album like 8-9 years ago and didn't like it and just has never released it. He says, I may release it one day, but right now I just don't feel like it.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, release it, release. So
Yeah, that's crazy. And like around the same time that Barry's In the Now came
yeah,
out, Robin had a solo album come out, and it was all the stuff that he was working on up until he passed away.
yeah,
And it was at the same time that Barry was recording this. So as a Bee Gee purist, as a Bee Gees who loves the Bee Gees as
yeah,
brothers and together, like in my mind, I'm like, they were writing songs together, or they were writing songs
yeah,
at the same time. Like Robin was writing one song, and he was like, "Oh no, I want Barry to come in and finish this," and blah blah
yeah.
blah. And then he never did. And it's like,
Oh,
part of me is like, what could have been if they would actually just been able to
yeah,
work together. But once Morris was the glue that held them together, because Barry would sing his leads, Robin would sing his leads. There
yeah,
would be a little bit of animosity, especially in the early days. In the 70s, there was
yeah.
like, who's the lead BG?
Right.
But then the later days, it's like, like I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and I could think this would it be sad with that huge hole, because Clarence was, Danny was the organist player in the E Street Band, and when he passed away, um, they brought in another organist. But when Clarence passed away, the big man, the
Yeah.
iconic, um, the next time they toured, they had 4 horn players.
Oh,
They
wow.
they did not even try to just have. Now later, during that tour, Jake Clemens, who is Clarence Clemens' nephew, was one of the 4, and he stepped up. And then the next time Bruce toured, they just had Jake doing, Clarence's part. But like, how do you, like Maurice, without Maurice, like there's this huge hole,
Yeah.
and like, and I'm sure it hurt,
Yeah.
as close as they were. So, all right,
Yeah.
I have kept you way too long. I am so sorry. All right, let
So,
me, I'm going to close officially now.
okay.
So, and then I'll edit all this together. David, thank you so much for joining me. I have had a blast. I hope you've had fun.
It was
Um,
amazing. It was awesome because as somebody who's passionate about a band, I know as you are passionate about Bruce, had two people speaking like-minded like this is always up my alley. I had an amazing time. Thank you.
yeah, I love when I do a B-side episode, but I especially love it when someone as passionate as you. And I love your stories. I can't wait to hear the playlist you get for me. I can't wait to hear Barry's new album, the country album, and we're going to have you back on. And you know what? Anytime you just feel like talking, just say, "Hey, Jesse, I thought of a couple other stories I need to tell you."
I
Um,
absolutely can remember and think of one right now about Bruce Springsteen on Saturday Night Live that I forgot to mention. So we're going to
oh,
save that for a future
you
episode.
want to save that for now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah.
that's a tease.
That's a
Um,
tease.
uh, Listeners, you please stay safe. Remember to wash your hands, social distance, wear an effing mask, be good to each other. The only way we're going to get through this is by helping each other. And for now, be good, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlistingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts as well as a Mary Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash and right now, who does? You can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only, Said Listening Bruce. Said Listening Bruce is part of the Southgate Media podcast group. The theme for Said Listening Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.